So for this physics test, I believe one of my major problems was not necessarily grasping the concepts and how to do each problem, but rather, I don't know, I noticed for 3 of the problems I pulled values from previous parts when it explicitly stated in the question, like, for this one, for part 2E, it says, the speed of light is c over 2, and for some reason I had pulled the speed from the previous problem of 0, 0, negative 8, which is not what you're supposed to do at all. And when I was looking back and I was like, wow, why did I do that? And also too, like, you can tell the value I got for the particle is way too big to be a particle's mass, which I understand theoretically. I mean, you could potentially give us a problem where it would be too big. But at the same time, logically, I should have went back and checked it. And I think during the test, I was thinking to do that, but I just, with the stress of everything, I forgot. And also here, too, I had pulled a velocity from before the hit, when in the question it says after. And then for this one, I had a minor conceptual issue with where the force should be, because I was trying to think back to class and how our teacher was pushing a water bottle against the table, and he said, theoretically, if I stop applying the force, it would still keep going and going. So I was like, oh, well, if you pick it up, but picking it up doesn't necessarily, because you can pick it up and it would still keep going in the X direction. So that was a conceptual issue on my part. And also, too, I had done a practice problem, like number 4 before the test, and I forgot that for the first step, you're supposed to use 0 and not the t over 2. So, yeah, the answer, that's why that one was wrong. What I did to study for the test, you can see here, I made kind of like a crib sheet type thing. I know we can't use it on the test, but it's just for concepts to make sure I understood. And I just put notes, like here I said don't forget to write units, because there was a point where I kept forgetting to write units. But then I also said in analytical problems, units, if you include them, you get points off, so I wrote that. And the teachers kept talking about relativistic, so even though that's the one that I missed, I did mention relativistic right here, and how to solve in each part, and solving for velocity from that, and the difference between V average for constant. I believe this will be your V average for, no, that's just V average. Okay, never mind, scratch that. Because V average for constant force, if you're thinking about the momentum principle and the iterative steps, that would have been for a constant Vf plus Vi over 2, and for non-constant forces, just final momentum over mass. But that's referenced later in this. But you can see, like, I put scalar, and then velocity instantaneous is at a specific moment, so it's like dr dt, and just major keys, points from some of the web assigns that we did that I thought were important, and then the regular vector over the magnitude for unit vector, and then how to vector addition, subtract, and computing the magnitude. And here's where I talked about the iterative method and the different types, like with constant force and then non-constant. Yeah, and then I made like little reminders, don't forget to calculate. And then here I did more like with variable relationships, since that's obviously an essential part when it comes to testing. Like you can see in problem number 1, it already has you talking about variable relations between each vector with the vector addition, subtraction. And yeah, so that was really important. That's why I put that in my study guide for myself to remember. And then I put like important relationships that I might not have thought about before when we were doing the web assign, but then after I was like, oh, that's really important, I should probably remember that. And I also did practice problems. I believe these were from the recitation, or not the recitation, the plus sessions, my bad. Yeah, I just put little reminders, like how the magnitude would be 0 if you don't have a position, and stuff like that. But But yeah, those were the kinds of little notes. Yeah, you can see I attended the plus session. All that. That's the stuff I did for in preparation for the test. I think the most difficult problem for me, or at least one of the ones that I got the most points off of, would probably have to be number 1. Yeah, I think number 1's the one I missed the most points. And the reason why was because before, I thought that if you solve for this theta, then doing the cosine of this theta times the 3-meter magnitude would give you the x component, and then the sine would give you the y if you do that, and then there's no z, so 0. I'm pointing to the wrong, I'm talking about part B, even though I'm pointing to A. But that was my conception before. But what I realized when looking at the past tests and everything, something that you have to do, like, that's not right, because this isn't starting at the origin. So you kind of have to move this third vector over here. So whatever this theta is, which I got to be 36.9 degrees when I did tan inverse of 3/4, because tangent is opposite over adjacent, and then you know the magnitude is 3 and 4 for R3 and R1. That's not supposed to be the angle you use, since technically it would be the angle here. So if you do the 90 plus that 36, you should get an angle of, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it should be 90 plus, so that would be 127. But let me double check with the testing guidelines. 2 seconds. Let's see. Nope, it's supposed to be 120. Okay, let's see. Okay, so you can see here with the testing guidelines, it's supposed to be 120. Let's see, reasoning as to why. Well, I suppose if you were to move this R3 at the origin, it's not going to be this angle that's in between, but rather the first one. And then this angle would be the angle that's there. And then, so I believe you would do the 30 here plus the 90 to give you the 120, which is why it's cosine 120 times the 3, and that's why I got this part wrong, was because of the errors in this one. So, I don't know, the test, since I didn't know that, and I was thinking, oh, this angle is undefined, you know, it's this to this, but this wasn't located at the original, the origin. And also, too, somebody was telling me that another way to think about it, instead of saying, oh, if you put the tail of R3 here, then this becomes 30, so that's 90 plus 30 is 120. Something else that could help you think about that were to be, if you were just to move the origin and the coordinate here, or the coordinate plane here, so it would be, I don't know if you can, yeah, here you go, you can see it better. Oh, I can't draw. Okay. But yeah, if you were to move that, ooh, I cannot draw using the camera and then trying to look through it. But if you were to move this coordinate system here, see, now you can see this angle's over here for the R3 vector, and it's on this end instead of moving this here. And you can see, like, this was 30, so if then on this end it would be 30, so then 120. But that's just another way to help think about it. And I think that was my major misconception on the test, was the angle for that. I mean, I know number 3 with the iterative process of non-constant forces was pretty difficult. that was probably the second one I was most iffy about. But my major issue was just little things, like plugging in wrong values when it said after velocity. The question directly stated it's speed divided by 2, or the speed of light divided by 2, c over 2. And I pulled the velocity from the previous question for some reason, I guess because of stress, anxiety. But yeah, I just had to, like, for this one, I did it before. So I should have remembered that the first iterative step starts with 0 instead of t over 2. But the stress and anxiety of the test, I think that's what got to me. But the biggest misconception that I had, misconception was the angle with the vectors and how it impacts its magnitude. At least in respects to it having to be in the origin. Because I wasn't thinking clearly. But yeah, that was my biggest problem in the test, was just vector origin, calculating the angle and how it factors into the magnitude. But everything else was pretty fine. I just have to be careful about the little things, like making sure I don't pull values from other parts of the problem where it shouldn't, or if this is after it directly tells me the value, then I just do something else. But I think that was pretty much what the issue was. But that's how I prepared for the test. That's what happened on the test, and yeah. Anyways.